At about the halfway point of the NHL season, we check in with the hosts of the top three teams in the Pacific Division. It's a special edition of Locked On Golden Knights, Locked On Oilers, and Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, great start. I'm Eddie Garcia, host of Locked On LA Kings. It's time for a special episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. It is also time to meet the other hosts of this show. Joining me is Chris Golick. He is the host of Locked On Golden Knights. And is Nick Zaharis. He is the host of Locked On Oilers. And we are going to talk about our season so far and what may be to come for our three teams. Guys, thanks for joining. We did a similar show before the season started with the hosts of the four teams that made the playoffs out of the Pacific last season. Sorry, Canucks. Today, we're just including the top three teams. And I'm really curious to find out how the seasons have gone for your teams so far this season. How have things gone as expected, or maybe what things have surprised you? But since the Golden Knights are leading the division, seems fair to start with you, Chris. And as I recall, all three of us picked the Oilers to be the top team in the Pacific, I believe. And that could happen in the end. But right now, the Golden Knights are on top. Give us a quick take on the season so far and how things have gone for the Vegas Golden Knights to this point.
Yeah, before we get in, obviously, everyone in Vegas is thinking about LA and that region, everything that's happening. And we just hope for the best for everybody. I think that's not enough words to say, but just want to make sure that everyone understands that we're thinking of them out here in Vegas and everything.
Thank you, Chris. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that said, back to the hockey here, how the season's going. Unexpected, number one. Pleasant surprise, of course. It's nice to see the Golden Knights where they are. I know there's a lot of season left, but kind of controlling their destiny, so to speak, as far as the playoffs are concerned. But knock on wood, it's actually January the 15th. There you go. You're posting on Wednesday. It's January the 15th, and the Vegas Golden Knights will be icing a 100% healthy roster. So that's really important. Will that last? Who knows? Inserts Mark Stone LTIR joke here, of course. But right now, everything is good in VGK land. It's a very pleasant surprise to a season that could have gone a million different ways so far.
Nick, I mentioned that all of us thought the Oilers would be the class of the division at the start of the season. Could end up being the case, but not so far. After making it all the way to the Stanley Cup final a year ago, how has the first half of the season gone in your mind for the Edmonton Oilers?
That first month was definitely a little hairy. They were very slow out of the gate. Their special teams were atrocious. If you go back and look through their first 10 games, they were giving up a power play goal against every third penalty kill, and you just can't be a competitive hockey team when you have a 66% penalty kill. And ever since then, they've really started to stabilize. Since about mid-November, they've had the best points percentage in hockey. Since November 23rd, they're 15-6-1, and they've really put together a weird team in the sense that the team is designed around scoring goals and playing as little defense as possible. And they're not really getting a lot of offense. You know, they're middle of the pack in terms of goals for. They're playing really good defense, which really isn't what you would expect from a group that had one pair in pen when we started the season, but they've pieced together a functional defense. And when Stuart Skinner doesn't need to be the difference between winning and losing, he's more than adequate. And you saw it last night. He was solid in the game against the Kings, but he didn't have to do anything too remarkable. But for the Oilers, it's really just been a matter of getting over that slow start. And since about the middle of November, they've done that.
Well, for the LA Kings, they've been, I think, pretty much what most of us expected. You know, maybe second, third place team. That's pretty much where they've been for most of the season. I think they're actually doing a little bit better than I expected. It is amazing that they've had a pretty decent stretch over the past few weeks and yet have not been able to gain any ground on Vegas. And when they were in second place, they couldn't separate themselves from Edmonton because you guys are playing so well also. But the offseason additions, goalie Darcy Kemper, forward Warren Fogle, Tanner Jeannot, and defenseman Joel Edmondson all have been positive additions. They've all pretty much filled the roles they've been asked to fill. The team's a little bit more physical, a little bit more blue collar, and it was hoped that that could be the difference for when the Kings get to playoff time, which of course they haven't had a ton of success, as Nick well knows, over the last couple of seasons. But Darcy Kemper, I think, has probably been the biggest surprise, top 5 in goals against and save percentage so far on the season. So we are just at the halfway point pretty much for all of our teams. Chris, who's your first half MVP for the Vegas Golden Knights and why?
It's Jack Eichel, without a doubt. The season that Jack is having is just remarkable right now. Eichel's progression since joining Vegas to becoming an effective 200-point player, I think, can't be, or 200-point. That's McDavid. 200-foot player is just it's remarkable to see, and I don't know if he's going to insert himself into the Selke conversation, but he's getting that direction. His face-off percentage is improved for that, but Jack Eichel, without a doubt, 54 points, missed the game on Sunday against the Wild. Hopefully just an illness. And in Vegas, you never know. We don't call them maintenance days. We call them maintenance day-to-days now. Maintenance day-to-day, because you never know what that could swell to. But 54 points, 43 assists for Jack. He's on pace for somewhere in the 100 and teens as far as points on the season. And you take Jack Eichel away from this team for a long stretch, it would be disaster, I think.
I would safe to assume he's not only met the expectations when you guys got him from Buffalo, but exceeded expectations.
Exceeded expectations on the ice, and equally as important off the ice. Just a good citizen. Does a lot of work with Best Buddies and different charitable organizations, and just very supportive. Listen, we know what the vibe was coming out of Buffalo, and how a lot of teams still feel about Jack based on what happened in Buffalo. But I can tell you, he is an outstanding human to interact with when there's cameras, when there's not cameras, private conversations, public conversations. Great human. And listen, I'm sure he had some growing pains in Buffalo, and it also helps the leadership and the veterans that he has around him here in Vegas. And he's become a professional in every facet of his game.
And one of the contentious points with Buffalo was that neck surgery that he wanted to get. The Sabres didn't want him to get it because I think no NHL player had ever had it before. Has there been no issues whatsoever with that neck surgery?
Zero. And, the first season when the Golden Knights actually missed the playoff with Jack Eichel, we thought the Eichel curse was friggin' off the charts at that point. Every time he took a hit, everyone's kind of holding their breath and stuff, but there's no concerns whatsoever as far as the neck, thankfully.
Nick, as far as your first half MVP, you've got a legit Hart Trophy contender on your roster. Of course, you've had that for a while, but I mean, this season, obviously, Leon Draisaitl is something else. So I would guess maybe that's where you're going to go, but who knows? Who's the MVP of the first half of the season in your mind for the Oilers?
The thing, and the strongest case for Draisaitl is the fact that his most common line mate this year is Vasily Podkolzin, who played 19 NHL games last season, had 0 goals and 11 and 8 points in said 19 games as a fourth liner for the Canucks. And Leon's done a lot of work this year with him, with Kasperi Kapanen, who they claimed off of waivers in November, and with Victor Arvidsson, who's been in and out of the lineup with nagging injuries. So looking at the splits, the fact that McDavid gets to play the majority of his minutes with Bouchard and Ekholm, whereas Draisaitl's playing a lot of his minutes with Darnell Nurse and Brett Kulak. When you look at his impact on the team when he's on the ice versus when he's not, it's just been invaluable that they've been able to separate McDavid and Leon this year in a way that they really need to, because offense has been difficult for them to come by this year. And when you have at least those two guys playing separate from each other, it allows you to, I don't want to say get by, but it makes it a lot easier where you're not overly reliant on 3 lines to try and figure out how they're going to chip in 1 or 2 goals to complement when they throw together McDavid, Hyman, and Draisaitl. They still do that from time to time when they're chasing a game or they need a goal, but for the most part, it's been an all-hands-on-deck kind of approach. If you go look at the counting stats, once you get past Leon, Connor, and Bouchard, there is a significant drop-off in the point totals once you get past those first 3 guys. And the fact that Connor and Leon are doing it separate from each other is keeping the Oilers where they're at.
Well, the Kings midseason MVP might be a surprising name. Jack Eichel and Leon Draisaitl are not. How about Vladislav Gavrikov? He is a defensive defenseman. He's been a solid player for the Kings, second pairing guy on the left side for the most part. But Drew Doughty went down in the preseason. As Chris knows, it happened in Vegas with a fractured ankle, and we were like, oh boy, how are we going to get by with this? And
first or second shift too, terrible.
Yeah, and head coach Jim Hiller, took a little while to figure it out, but he decided to take a left shot defenseman and move him to the right side on the top pairing. And we're like, okay. And it's worked out better than anyone could have expected. He's been amazing for the Kings. Might help out that he's in a contract year. Oh, by the way, it's funny how that happens. But he's been fantastic. Him and Mikey Anderson on the top pairing have been a great shutdown pair. Gavrikov's averaging 23 minutes, 51 seconds of ice time. He's a plus 16. That's 10th in the NHL amongst defensemen. And just has been unbelievable in filling in for Drew Doughty. So much so that we're wondering, is Drew Doughty just going to get his job back when he comes back in a month or so? Are they going to break up that pairing that's been so unbelievable? So Vladislav Gavrikov has been the first half MVP for the LA Kings, which I would not have said at the beginning of the season. Coming up next, we're going to talk about some of our pleasant surprises. I guess maybe I kind of did in a way, but some pleasant surprises for the LA Kings, for the Golden Knights and the Edmonton Oilers coming up here on Locked On LA Kings, Locked On Golden Knights, and Locked On Oilers right after this. All right, whether you live in LA, Edmonton, or Vegas, so many great live events to check out, sports, theaters, events, concerts, comedy shows. And when you check out those live events, no matter where you are, you need to use Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks. It makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff, shows you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste your time searching for thousands of tickets. The all-in pricing feature shows you the total up front. You got no surprises at checkout. And you can check out the Vantage Point with a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy it. You'll always get the lowest price, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, we continue our Pacific Division Roundtable. Time to get into some pleasant surprises so far this season. Could be an individual, could be some aspect of the team. Nick, I'll let you lead up on this one. Biggest pleasant surprise for the Edmonton Oilers so far this season?
I mentioned Podkolzin with Leon, but so I'll do something different just for the purposes of keeping this conversation going. It's Brett Kulak, somebody who's been a third pair guy for most of his career, killed penalties on that Montreal team that went to the Cup final, but he never really played as many minutes and against the quality of competition as he's had this year. And Darnell Nurse started the season very, very slowly. He was on the ice through the first, 12, 13 games for half of the goals the Oilers had conceded through said first 14, 15 games. And there were real questions of who are we going to play with Nurse just to get these minutes passable, not even to win these minutes, just to not get destroyed in said minutes. And it's been elevating Kulak, playing him more minutes. It's been bumping Stetcher down the lineup, playing him a little bit less. It's been bringing Ty Emberson along slowly. I mean, I guess I'm kind of cheating by naming three defensemen all playing varying roles, but they've found a decent functional mix for what was their big question mark coming into the season. I mean, the first day of the season on opening night, the conversation was, what defensemen are the Oilers going to add at the deadline to bolster this group and slide everyone down one spot? And to get to that point, they still had to play, the first 55, 60 games of the season before we could talk about a deadline ad. And Brett Kulak's been great in the role they've asked him to play this year.
Chris, any pleasant surprises for your Golden Knights so far?
Pavel Dorofeev and Brett Howden, two names that people might not have even known existed outside of Vegas. Brett Howden, of course, New York Rangers background and everything. But point being is Pavel Dorofeev, 16 goals. Brett Howden, 15 goals. Ivan Barbashev, 15 goals as well. Those are your three leading scorers for this Vegas Golden Knights team that's either at the top or right at the top of not just the West, but the entire National Hockey League standings. So, yes, that's a pleasant surprise. Don't get me wrong. I'm very happy that Pavel Dorofeev is finding his way. Very happy that Brett Howden is having an outstanding year. Keegan Kolesar, shout out there. Third, fourth line energy player, just hit double digit, 10 goals. And it's also a concern because I wonder come playoff time, is Brett Howden the difference maker the Golden Knights are going to be looking to get that big goal in a late game? I see you chuckling over there, Nick. You're waiting for that. That's the thing here. That's what I wonder about as someone supporting and reporting on this team here. And it's very pleasant. Don't get me wrong. It's a very exciting story, but for me, it's also equally as concerning that the Golden Knights don't have that Jonathan Marchessault. Don't have that player that's going to be that go-to that can score 30, 40 goals. So interesting to see how it plays out. And again, there's over 40 games left in the season. So we'll see if someone does step into that sniper type of go-to player that's going to score the goals. But for now, fun to watch what Dorofeev and Howden and even Kolesar are doing. Very pleasant surprises.
For the LA Kings, I think their pleasant surprise has been a guy who's been a pleasant surprise in his brief time. A young player, a young forward named Alex Laferriere. Rookie season last year, comes out of Harvard. We were expecting him. He's going to at least spend a season in the AHL, but through circumstances and his solid play, he played 81 of 82 games last year, 12 goals, 23 points. This season, he's already passed those numbers, 13 goals, 26 points in 41 games. He carried the offense for the early part of the season. He's gotten more aggressive, more confident, going to the net, battling, something he didn't do a lot of his rookie year when he was just kind of getting his feet wet in the NHL. Also getting some time on the Kings' second power play unit. Should be getting better as he goes forward. But I'd say second-year forward Alex Laferriere has been the Kings' pleasant surprise since he joined the team and continues to be so. So even though all three of our teams have had very good first halves of the season, there's always things to improve on. Nick, what is the one thing or maybe one player for the Edmonton Oilers that needs to get better going forward?
You could name a few guys. You could say Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. You could say Jeff Skinner. You could say Victor Arvidsson. You could say Adam Henrique. I'm going to say Jeff Skinner purely because he just hasn't found a fit even in the lineup, let alone playing well. He's been out of the lineup more than once over the last few weeks when they've had variability, when they've needed to dress a seventh defenseman, when they've preferred to dress an extra defensive, someone like Derek Ryan over what Skinner brings to the table. And this was supposed to be, the perfect free agent mercenary signing. You bring in a guy who scored 30 goals a couple times to ride shotgun with Connor or with Leon. He puts up 30 goals. He goes to free agency and tries to get a 3x5 from a bad team, and everybody lives happily ever after. You get to ring chase on a good team, you get to put up good stats, and you get to get that one last big contract, and it just hasn't come together. They started the season with him on Leon's wing. That didn't really click. They started the season very slow. Some of that was just bad shooting percentage luck. They were 4 or 5% those first 10 games. And naturally, when you're a coach, you need to find some way to get your offense going. So Skinner ended up getting the short end of the stick there. And he hasn't really been able to find his way back into the top six. He can't get on the first power play unit because they have a consistent unit that's been the same for 3 seasons now, and they're not going to change that. But Skinner's still talented. He's still fast in a straight line. He's still got a wicked shot. It's simply a matter of, is there a fit here? Or is there an argument to say, let's try and make a hockey trade. Let's send him somewhere where we can get something that's going to fit what we need from the role we're asking. Because I don't think anybody expected Skinner to only be playing 12, 13 minutes a night and being a candidate to be healthy scratched. I mean, they signed this guy within the first hour of free agency opening back in July, and he's not even in the lineup.
Chris, obviously the Golden Knights have had a nice first half, as you mentioned, amongst the top teams point-wise in the entire NHL, but there's always things to improve on. Maybe you've touched on this a little bit, but any player or any aspect of the Golden Knights that needs to get better going forward?
Start with Tomas Hertl. Hertl's been a very nice story, pacing for about 60 points. -10, though. 5-on-5 play, I think, is a little bit of a concern. He's also been moved around in the lineup a lot. He's been centering sometimes, been on the wing sometimes. Some he's never done his entire career. But starting to find his way on the wing just kind of depends on the Golden Knights circumstances. Would like to see his 5-on-5 metrics improve a little bit because -10 for someone who's going to be in that second line role. Concerned once the playoffs start. From a totality perspective, a little concerned about the depth right now. I mentioned Dorofeev, Brett Howden, leading scorers for the Vegas Golden Knights. It's a bit it's equally as exciting as it is concerning for me. You look down at like a player like Alex Holt, who the Vegas Golden Knights brought in. He's got just a couple of goals and a small handful of assists after scoring, I think, 16 goals in a complimentary role with a bad New Jersey Devils team last year. So you'd like to see someone like that do a little bit better. The depth is a concern, especially on the wing. However, that's where we have this GM, Kelly McCrimmon, who likes to pull rabbits and players and all sorts of luxurious items outside this top hat while he's tapping a magic wand against it and finding ways to creative ways to increase the Golden Knights' skill while somehow managing to stay kind of partially cap compliance.
As for the LA Kings, great defensively, but sometimes they do struggle to find offense, as Nick knows with the last game that they played against the Edmonton Oilers. A couple of names I would throw out there would be Kevin Fiala and Trevor Moore. Trevor Moore was a 30-goal scorer last year, and people wondered, was that an anomaly? Was that a career year, or is this a guy that was breaking out? Well, at this point, it looks like it was kind of a career year. He's really struggled to get anything going. And Kevin Fiala can be a dynamic player at times, but he can also make a lot of mistakes and try and force a lot of things. And he has just not been the player the Kings need him to be. As far as, though, an aspect of the team, the power play has been awful this year. It's bottom 5 in the NHL. It's at around 15%. Maybe when Drew Doughty comes back, who quarterbacks the number 1 power play unit, maybe that helps, but I don't know that that's enough to significantly turn around what has been a bad power play and not getting any better at all so far this season. So I mentioned the Kings, great defense, but offensively challenged. If their power play was just okay, it would make a huge difference. But the fact that it's been bad and not looking any better is certainly a big concern for the LA Kings. Up next, we're going to talk about some familiar names that all of our teams know about, and also kind of look down the road a bit. That's coming up next on this special edition of Locked On Oilers, Locked On Kings, and Locked On Golden Knights. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning and recruiting more MVPs with Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Indeed partners up with you on every step of the hiring process. Find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. With Indeed Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of qualified applicants with resumes on Indeed that match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. And listeners to this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, we are wrapping up our Pacific Division roundtable. And Nick, the Kings have a former Oiler on the squad this season that was part of your team that made it to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. Warren Fogle has come over and been really good fit for the Kings. Numbers aren't going to blow you away, but he just does everything really well. Good energy guy, grit. He just makes a lot of things happen on the ice and has been a really good fit here. And even though they weren't traded for each other, it almost seems like they kind of were. But Victor Arvidsson, you mentioned, left the Kings, signed with the Oilers, kind of a similar type player, but we liked him in LA, but he always seemed to get hurt. And you mentioned it earlier, he's been nicked up this year, but how has Victor Arvidsson worked out in Edmonton?
When he's been in the lineup, he fits nicely as a complement to what Leon and what Podkolzin have brought to their line, because Podkolzin is just, like a dog playing fetch. The puck gets below the goal line and he just doesn't stop skating. He's got a great motor. He wins the puck. He gets it to Leon. And then Arvidsson has done a nice job for a guy his size. He does a good job of getting to the net front, of getting low, for lack of a better word, using his body leverage to create space for himself. It just hasn't really come together for him. The underlying numbers are decent. They're winning the minutes he's out there. He just needs some luck. I said the same thing about Hyman before he started really scoring. I would say the same thing about Henrique. I would argue even the same thing about Skinner. A lot of the Oilers supporting cast, they haven't gotten the puck in the net, and it's not for a lack of playing well. They're controlling possession when they're out there. It's just not going in, and sometimes the whole season is just like that.
Chris, a couple of former Kings in Vegas. Tanner Pearson, who won a cup with us in 2014, made the squad on a training camp tryout. And I've got a soft spot for the hardworking defensive defenseman, and Braden McNabb is a nice part of a great defensive core for you guys. How are those guys doing for you?
McNabb he had bad turnover the other game, but other than that, McNabb is phenomenal. And I guess question for you, something we love watching McNabb do is when he gets on the offensive side of the blue line, he has this what I call a roller hockey toe drag, and he just finds a way to change an angle on a shot and scores a few goals a year like that every year. It's the greatest thing in the world to watch. Has he ever had any goals like that or moments like that with the Kings?
I don't remember any. I always remember, though, you could see him lining up a guy who was trying to enter the zone right around the blue line, and he was just going to, yeah. And we don't have anybody that does that anymore. And I used to love it. You can see here it comes, right? You just line this guy up and just going to crush him into the boards. That's what I remember most when I think about Braden McNabb.
All these kids in the NHL right now, they don't know what a hip check is, so they don't know how to get out of the way because he's the last person in the league that throws a hip check. He's the last. Yeah. No one else in the league hip checks besides Braden McNabb.
And referees don't know about it anymore because they like to call interference penalties or something when somebody does a hip check now. They don't know what that is. So the Kings, Oilers, and Golden Knights, they've all been pretty much top three in the Pacific all season long. We've all played each other twice. We've split. The home teams won every game so far. Nick, are you confident that these three teams are going to be the three teams at the top of the division when it's all said and done?
I was trying to make an argument for any of the other teams when I was putting together my note sheet, and I can't find one. The Canucks on paper should be better than they are, but they've had a very weird first half. They haven't really gotten the goaltending they've expected, whether it be from Seelovs or from Demko, who returned from injury. JT Miller's counting stats are very unimpressive for somebody who has had 80, 90-point seasons. Pettersson is playing reasonably well, but the biggest issue for the Canucks is they have one good defenseman. Other than Quinn Hughes, that unit has struggled massively this year, and it hasn't been able to come together for them. The Flames are a nice story, but I don't think they're capable of stringing together the wins requisite with getting into this conversation. Could they hang around as a wild card? Sure. I don't think they're leapfrogging any of these teams. I don't see an argument really for anyone leapfrogging our three teams. It doesn't seem likely based on what we've seen so far. Of course, things can change, the second half of the season. We'll see if anybody can string something together. But based on what we've seen, no, I think we're absolutely the first three teams in the Pacific. It's just a matter of the order.
I agree. And I think Chris was shaking his head as well. But Chris, when you look at the rest of the West, Winnipeg, Minnesota, Dallas, Colorado, if we're looking kind of bigger picture and deeper run into the playoffs, any of those teams really kind of, I don't know, strike fear is the right word, but really impress you as teams to contend with down the road?
I mean, Winnipeg, you got that's an easy one, right? Plus 48 goal differential. I was actually looking at that, getting an answer ready for the last question. In the Pacific, you got Vegas, Edmonton, LA, plus 34, plus 23, plus 21 on the goal differentials. And then it's all a big bunch of red after that for the bottom five teams in the Pacific. Vancouver's only -6, and then Calgary is minus 10. So we'll see how that plays out. But Winnipeg, of course, is going to be a team to watch. Not to take a dig at LA here, but Winnipeg and LA kind of seem to have a commonality, right? Solid regular season, playoffs come, things definitely change a little bit. That said, LA, I think, is the team that has my attention right now. You look at what they've accomplished without Drew Doughty. You look at their goal differential, plus 21. Then you look at the goals against, 100, which is 14 better than Vegas, 17 better than Edmonton right now. And the Kings are going to get a massive trade deadline acquisition in Drew Doughty, plus whatever might happen come whatever the salary situation is. So the Kings, I think, are a team who are going to make a lot of noise down the stretch, number one. And I definitely agree. It's Kings, Edmonton, Vegas, top three. How that shakes out, I don't know, but that's your top three in the Pacific, unless just something really weird happens.
Last one real quick, Chris. Any position the Oilers would be, or sorry, the Golden Knights would be looking to add at the deadline?
Oh, wingers, definitely. Wingers and depth pieces. The Golden Knights have about 19 centers on their roster, and they love loading up on centers, especially late in the game for those faceoffs and everything. But I would say particularly right wing is going to be where Kelly McCrimmon's going to be looking to add a key difference maker, a vet with playoff experience that can score some big timely goals, because Golden Knights are 1 or 2 injuries away from this thing going pretty south. And luckily, again, January the 15th, Golden Knights are fully healthy. Will it be like that, especially after the 4 Nations and everything? Who knows?
Nick, real quick, any position that you think the Oilers were looking to add at the deadline?
The consensus has been a right-handed defenseman to play with Darnell Nurse and slide everybody else down one more spot. So you have a really good 7th defenseman. And we all know, you're going to need 7 or 8D to get through a playoff run if you're going to go the distance. And having a 7th and then an 8th defenseman you genuinely trust and feel good about, that matters a lot come the playoffs.
Yeah, and the Kings are looking for a right-handed shot that can help them out on the power play. Their top 6 are all left-handed shots, and so it's been something that they're looking forward to. And again, if some kind of a veteran guy who could help out on the wing is certainly something they're looking for. Chris Golick is your host, one of your co-hosts of Locked On Golden Knights. Nick Zaharis is your host of Locked On Oilers, and I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On Kings. Guys, it's been awesome to learn a little bit more about what's been going on with your teams. It's been a good season so far for all of our teams, and hopefully we can do this again come playoff time and get an update on where we all are. So thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it. And thanks for everybody for watching. If you want to check out more of our shows, obviously, YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. This has been a Pacific Division Roundtable, a special edition of Locked On Golden Knights, Locked On Oilers, and Locked On LA Kings, your teams every day.